I'm the city manager here in Chelsea, and first I just want to welcome everyone tonight. I'm really thrilled that we have so many people here. This is actually a very good turnout for a meeting such as this. So I'm really pleased about that. It's a very important meeting. As you know, the Community Preservation Act was something that the voters of Chelsea approved back in November of 2016, approved it fairly overwhelmingly in Chelsea. So it has a lot of support here. And it's a great thing for the city because it generates a good chunk of money every year for the city to do very important work. This Community Preservation Act Committee, which has been convened to help us administer and spread out and dole out the money. The committee will make recommendations to the City Council each year about how best to spend the money. They've been working hard for about a year, maybe a little bit more, to try to figure out how best to implement this act and put in place a procedure for distributing these funds. Tonight's goal is for them to hear from the community about how best to do that. There's a lot for the committee to do. The act, the statute, gives some direction to communities about how to spend the money, but also gives the community a lot of discretion about spending the money. So the statute says you can spend it in 3 categories only: affordable housing, basically, open space and recreation, and historic preservation, but gives you a lot of discretion about how you spend it within those categories. In addition, the statute says you have to spend at least 10% of everything you get each year on each of those categories, but the rest of the 70% of the money, it has to be spent in one or more of those categories, but it's at the complete discretion of the committee and the council as to how much falls into each pot each year. And so what the committee's trying to do is figure out where the priorities lay for this particular community, and that's why it's trying to gather your input. There's a fair amount of money already available. As I said, this statute was enacted by the voters of Chelsea back in November of 2016. It took effect, and we've got 2 good years of revenue already, and we actually have, I think the committee has about $1.2 million already received, and it keeps receiving more money each and every time a tax bill goes out to the residents. So this is a act that is generating probably about $600,000 a year for the city to spend. This committee is going to be the ones making the decisions, the initial decisions about how to spend it. Their recommendations then go to the city council, which ultimately has the determination as to whether to accept or reject those recommendations. So this committee is very important, and it's looking for your input as to how best it can move forward in making those kind of recommendations to the council and where to prioritize this month. So your input is extremely important to the community. So that's why tonight's so important. It's going to help them formulate their plan for moving forward. So again, I thank you for coming. It's really, the committee's really looking forward to hearing from the community about where they think the highest priorities lie for this community. And so I'm grateful that you decided to show up, and I'm sure they'll be grateful for you.
And now we have Jose and Carolyn from the Community Preservation Committee.
Muy buenas noches. Muchas gracias por venir. Como el administrador de la ciudad nos comunicó, a ustedes nos van a ayudar a determinar cómo deberíamos de gastar estos fondos del CPA. Así que por favor, Les agradecemos desde nuestro corazón que ustedes están aquí para dar su opinión y dejarnos escuchar lo que ustedes creen que deberíamos de gastar o cómo deberíamos de gastar el dinero. Además, nosotros somos 2 miembros de este comité, pero también hay otros miembros del comité, CPC members, if you can raise your hand. Si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta, por favor pueden hablar con las personas que levantaron la mano. Así nosotros podemos, este es un comienzo. Ustedes nos van a ayudar a determinar cómo gastamos los fondos en este momento, pero con el pasar de los años, nosotros también, las prioridades de nuestra comunidad van a cambiar. Entonces nosotros vamos a continuar preguntándole a la comunidad cómo deberíamos de usar estos fondos. Así que este es el comienzo de la conversación y es una conversación que va a continuar. Así que les agradecemos por ser parte de este evento esta noche y por favor, si nos ven en la calle o si tienen alguna idea, la pueden escribir en las mesas y también pueden hablar con nosotros. ¿Ok? Sure. Although I think, how's the translation? Did everyone understand?
Yeah, we spoke in English as well, just to kind of get everyone
Okay. Well, thank you so much for everyone that came out. We really appreciate you coming out and really voicing your opinion on how we should spend this money. As the city manager mentioned, these funds, the people of Chelsea decided that we needed to invest in those 3 different areas. So we really need your help to determine how we should spend those funds. And this is the beginning of the conversation, a conversation that we're going to continue to have as our community priorities are going to change over time. Right now, our priority might be one of those 3 buckets, but with the time, as the time changes, they might change. So thank you so much for being here and being part of this process. And there's some community members that raised their hands. You can ask us any questions as the night progresses, or if you see us down the street, you can definitely talk to us. And we encourage you guys to write projects on the tablecloth or ideas that you think we should spend this money on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose and Caroline. Anna, would you mind flipping the slides, at least in the beginning? I'm Jen Goldson. I'm a planning consultant, and I've been hired by the city to help with this process. And Anna and I are working together. We're from my company, J.M. Goldson, Community Preservation and Planning. And we're really happy to be here. I'm actually happy to be back. I was here and I see some familiar faces. I ran a workshop here about housing. I think it was about 1.5 years ago or so. So thank you to all of you who come out to these things again and again. It's really great to see some familiar faces. And we love the work we do with communities. It's exciting to learn where the priorities are on spending the money. There's, in one way you might look at when we present how much money there is, you might say, that's a lot of money. But then when you think about all the different things you can do with it, you say, actually it's not that much money. And we have to really prioritize how we use that money and be very strategic about it. So we're going to go through, so that's me and Anna. We're going to go through a relatively short presentation, but it's a lot of interaction with you. So we're going to be using the little polling devices on the table. They look like little teeny remote controls. We're going to be also using, if you have a cell phone, we're going to be asking you to text in some answers at one point. And if you don't have a cell phone, we have a backup plan where you can write your answers on an index card. And then we also, throughout the night, we put this paper down on the table not because we wanted it to look like a white tablecloth restaurant. We really wanted you to be able to write on the table. And so we gave everybody markers of all different colors. And anytime, you may have come here tonight with some ideas for what you'd like to see this funding used for. Or maybe you didn't. So while I'm presenting, you may get some more ideas, because I'm going to talk about what you can do with the funds, what's eligible, and we're going to give some examples. And what we would love to do is just have you jot down any ideas you have, either right now, while we're presenting, while you're talking, anytime tonight. And we're going to take these tablecloths, we're going to roll them up, and we're going to type out all of your answers. and look for some common themes and some similar things and see if there are some priorities that come into play and project ideas. So now we have a few polling questions. So why don't we trade places, Anna?
Does everyone have enough of the little polling devices at their table, or do some folks need more? I'm looking particularly at this very full table over here.
Everyone should have their own.
You don't have one? You have extra? Okay, does anybody else need more? Do you guys need more? You guys have one? They look like this. Anybody got one? You three? Lots of extras? You're good? Okay. Everyone's good. Okay, so the first, so you'll see on the little doodad, it says 1/A, 2/B, 3/C, and 4/D. So we'll be using those to pull in the questions. So these are just to get us warmed up with using these little devices, because we'll use them later on in the presentation. And so the first question, an easy warm-up. What is your age? A, 17 or younger, B, 18 to 34, C, 36 to 64, or D, 65 and older. And so whichever age bracket you're in, you can, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer, but you could, and you just press it, and then we'll see the results in a second. So.
And it's anonymous, so we won't know how old you are.
Yeah, now.
We won't know if you are.
Okay, if you think it's not working, it's okay. You can press it as many times as you want if you think you're not pulling in. It won't double count your age. And as long as the green light's on, it means that you can submit your response. And then it'll pop up when we close the survey. Is everyone, okay, we're gonna, well, there's another warm-up, so we'll do another question, and maybe everyone feels a little more comfortable. So let's see the results. We have a nice spread across the age categories. How does everyone feel with these little guys? Good? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Feeling good? Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, what is your first language? A, English, B, Spanish, or C, other, another language? Maybe you don't understand what I'm saying if it's another language. Okay, everyone feeling better about it? Number 2? Okay. 41.
48?
Okay, so we have a couple more. Okay, let's
It
see.
looks like it's slowed down.
Wow, a healthy split. Okay, one more. Let's do another one. Okay, how long have you lived in, worked in, or otherwise been associated with Chelsea? A, less than a year. B, 1 to 3 years. C, 4 to 9 years. 5, D, 10 to 14 years. Or E, over 15 years. That would be E. Yeah. 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 Feel better? Okay. Oh, get your answers in.
48. There we go.
Okay. Wow, lots of old timers in the room. We have one more? I think so. Okay, so we have one more. Do you rent or own the place you live? A, rent. B, own, or C, neither? I don't know what you do, but that's your option. Get in the hang of it.
48, that's fine. Oh, we got one more. 49.
Okay, everyone, you guys are getting so good. Wow, lots lots of renters in the room. Okay.
We're not gonna do that.
Oh yeah, not that. Well, that'll be later. A little sneak preview. And now we're going to go back to the presentation. Okay. Everyone felt good? Great. Okay. Okay, so thank you all for being here. So as Caroline, Jose, and Tom all talked about, the CPC is working on this for about over a year, and Jen and I are planning consultants who've been working with them. And this is what we've been doing so far leading up to today. We've been researching, learning more about Chelsea. I'm not as familiar with Chelsea as Jen is. And then we were doing a lot of community engagement. So I see some people from our focus groups earlier this summer. And then we also were tabling at some community events, including Back to School Day, National Night Out, and some other community events, and sort of talking with you and hearing about the needs, opportunities, and resources available in Chelsea that could work with CPA. And then today, we're at the community workshop. Thank you again for showing up. And then after today, we'll be drafting the plan, and there'll be a public hearing in December. So if you want to continue to stay involved, that's a great opportunity to continue your involvement with the plan. And then in the new year, they'll be accepting applications sometime in the new year after the plan is adopted. Yes. Oh, and we've also had an online survey. So if you have it today, you're also having the survey available over here to fill out. And then you can also access it online, and we will be sending that out via email if you put your email address on the sign-in sheet. Okay. So some of you maybe know a lot about the Community Preservation Act. Some of you are maybe less familiar about the Community Preservation Act. We want to make sure we're all on the same page before we start talking about what sort of projects we could be working on in Chelsea. So CPA is a local option statute, which means that the municipality chooses to adopt it. So the Chelsea, you all, the residents, adopted it through, you voted on it on a ballot referendum. And it's a smart growth tool that allows you to preserve open space and historic resources. It allows you to create affordable housing, and it also allows you to create outdoor recreation facilities. And so it's primarily a real estate tool. It deals with real property, and you can use it to acquire property, to buy it, or you can use it to improve existing property. But it can either be public property or it can be private property as long as there's a public interest. And CPA can also support programs that provide direct assistance to low-income households. So typically that has to do with housing vouchers or homeowner assistance or rental assistance, but it can be in other areas as well. So where does the money come from? So one part comes from a tax surcharge. So 1.5% comes off of your taxes, and it can vary in communities from 1.5 to up to 3%. And there are 3 exemptions that you can choose as a community to adopt, and Chelsea decided to adopt all 3. So for low-income households, so if they fall below the 80% median income, or if you're an older household and you fall below the 60%, let me double check, yeah, 60%, and 100% median income, then you are exempt from the surcharge. And then Chelsea, there are 2 other exemptions, and they have to do with the first 100,000 come off of your either both residential and commercial and industrial properties. So that tax, question. There will be time for questions, but it might be answered. Do you want to ask it now?
No, just go back to the three ways of assessing that. Are you doing all 3 of them, or one of the 3?
All of them. So all 3 exemptions were adopted.
No, I understand that, but for like somebody who's over 60, you're still charging them a surcharge, or is it limited?
If you're over 60 and you fall, you are exempt completely from it. You need to apply annually to make sure that to ensure your exemption. But if you're over 60, then you're exempt. And make less than the median income. Sorry.
That's what I'm just saying. There's one or there's another thing, and then you have to apply. Nobody said.
You have to
Yeah,
apply.
you have to
There's
apply.
no information about that.
You can ask the question and then, oh, I need to put on my little headset now. That's good. Okay, yeah.
Application process.
Yo vengo aquí a representar a mi hija, aunque esto a trabajar no había venido
Oh, hold on, I think she's not.
Sí, es que yo vengo porque la que puede agarrar la casa es mi hija. Vine allá y no había llegado a trabajar, pero no sé. Ella llama María del Carmen Ortiz. Y por eso me hizo la pregunta. Que si que yo la pensaba de ella, que ella es la que puede agarrar la casa.
Could you just repeat the
Yeah,
question?
what was the question?
No, que yo vengo por representación de mi hija.
Oh, great. Thank you for being here. Okay, there'll be time for more questions at the end of all this information that I'm dumping on you. But I also want to make sure that everyone walks away knowing more about CPA than when they walked in. So the surcharge that goes on your taxes is then combined with a match from the state. And it can be, it changes from year to year. So last year it was 17.2%, let me double check, yeah. And then this coming year it's estimated to be 11.5. So combined, including both the estimations from the state on the 11.5% as well as the estimations from this fiscal year in terms of what the tax surcharge is generated from Chelsea, it's about 1.46 million. So the majority comes from Chelsea, and a smaller part comes from the state. But it does help, and that helps, increase the amount of money that you are generating yourselves. So as Tom also mentioned in his introduction, 10% must be spent in each of the three categories, which is open space and recreation, affordable housing, and historic preservation. The remaining 70% can be spent in any of those three areas. So you can choose to spend all of it in one category, or you can choose to divide it evenly across those three, or you can choose to see what projects come in and then they can be spent according to whatever projects are available. So you have a lot of options. And then other communities have decided to designate it in different ways. So Cambridge chooses to spend the remaining 70% on affordable housing, and that's something they've done from the beginning. Other communities, also dependent on how much open space and land is available, they choose to spend more money on open space and recreation and historic preservation. So it's really up to the values that the community sees as, how the community decides to define itself and what values they want to prioritize in that 70%. So how to apply to get the money? So CPA is really concerned with making sure that you either have direct site control, so you have control over the property yourself, either as a property owner, or you co-sign with the person who actually owns the property. And it also helps if you have, community organization buy-in, and the town, the city also supports your project. And if you can demonstrate that in your application is then also stronger. So you submit an application to the CPC. So the people that at the beginning of this presentation all raise their hands, they're the people who are going to be reading the project applications that you submit. And then the CPC reviews the application and votes to recommend some projects to the City Council. And the City Council cannot vote on anything that the CPC does not recommend to them. So that's also important, is to make sure that the CPC understands the value of your project, and so the City Council can only vote on what the CPC recommends to them. And then the City Council votes to either approve, deny, or reduce the funding. And then this over to Jen.
So we just gave you a lot of technical information that we're going to quiz you on the way out to make sure that you remember everything Anna just said. No, I'm just joking. I'm not going to quiz anybody. You don't need to remember that. But some people really like to know, well, where does the money come from and how much money do we have? But what I'm going to talk about now is what can you use the money for? And so we've based this matrix on the Department of Revenue has made this, it's like a little cheat sheet showing you the verbiage in the statute and what you're allowed to spend funds on. But what I'm going to do is give you examples of projects so you can see in a little, I think, more interesting way how the money can be used. But what this matrix is showing is that you can acquire open space, land for recreation, historic preservation properties, or historic resources really, and land to create community housing or preserve community housing. And you can also create new recreation like parks and playgrounds. You can create new open space, like you could tear down a building to create a forest again, or a farm, or you can create a community garden. You can create new housing units or create new housing units through existing buildings. Like if there's an apartment building but it doesn't have deed restricted affordable housing, you could use CPA money to create affordable, permanently affordable housing. So we're going to get into some more examples, but that's what this chart is talking about. Next slide. So, it's hard for me to see this. So, under community housing, we have 3 examples. One is you could create a homeowner, what am I doing, Stephanie? Oh, you don't want me to trick. Okay, I'll be careful. So, you can create a home ownership program for low-income households or moderate-income households. You could create a Chelsea preference so that you have a local preference to give funds to low-income Chelsea residents who are looking to buy a home in Chelsea, so you can help make buying property more affordable. That kind of program would require someone to administer it, and you'd have lots of a way to apply for it. It would probably be done through a lottery. There's lots of different structures to it. You could do down payment assistance or write down the cost of a mortgage. There's lots of ways you can do it. But one thing I wanted you to keep in your mind is that home ownership programs is one option. Another option is a local rental assistance program. So I don't know if you've heard of Section 8 vouchers or Massachusetts Housing Choice vouchers. It's a way to get the federal or state government to help pay for rental, your rent, and so that you're not paying more than 30% of your rent. Well, those are federal and state programs, but the city of Chelsea could create its own local program with different types of rules and regulations that don't have to be the same as the state and federal rules and regulations. And so that's something else you could do with CPA funds. And then a third thing is you could create new units through new construction. Now, you saw how much money was available, and a lot of you probably know that it's very expensive to create new units. So what the CPA funds could do is probably not pay for a whole new development, but it could help support some of a development and help the development get funding from other places too. And so it would be used as the local share in a development. So you could help create new units, building new units, or converting existing units into affordable housing. So those are 3 ideas, and we picked these ideas because when we did the focus groups and when we talked to folks at back to school night back to school day and the National Night Out, they gave us ideas of what they wanted to see. So we're just giving you some examples. So the next slide is about historic preservation. So these are some examples. I know that there's a beautiful cemetery here that's all closed off, and some folks came up with the idea of what if you use CPA funds to create public access. It's almost like a park, but it's a historic resource too. You could do stewardship of your existing public buildings. So you have quite a number of public buildings, including the City Hall, that are historic buildings. And you could do projects to improve that, to make preserve the historic features, I don't know what the needs of that particular building are, but you could look at what historic preservation needs there are in the building and make it even more beautiful than it is today. You could save buildings. So if there are,
Lost of my.
oh,
You're stepping on the point.
can you hear me now? Okay. So you can also save buildings, and they could be private buildings. So if there's a beautiful old building that's dilapidated, like the one with the big, what is that called? A life-saving, what is it called? A life preserver. So we put a life preserver on that building. It's a big old dilapidated building somewhere. I don't even know where that picture is. It's not in Chelsea. You could use the funds to buy it or help someone else buy it, like an historical society or some other group, and save it and create something out of it. You could even create affordable housing out of it, or you could create a museum, or you could create, really anything you want. But the idea is that you can use CPA funds to save private buildings that are falling apart maybe, but it's still important to Chelsea's history. You can also use it to preserve documents and artifacts. There's one community that used it to preserve an antique fire truck that they then displayed to the community. You can use it to preserve historic documents. I know a lot of city clerks have very, very old vital records. You can use it to make sure they don't crumble and disappear. And then you can also use the historic preservation funds to create handicap accessibility to historic buildings, especially historic buildings that have public access. So perhaps they're privately owned buildings, but if they have public access, like a museum or event space or something like that, it could even be a religious building, or it could be the city hall, or it could be any other historic building. There are ways to ensure public purpose, even for private buildings. And I'm happy to get into more details about the legality of that, but I just wanted to throw that out as an idea too. And then under open space and recreation, there's lots of things you can do. You can create community gardens. You could create new parks, and we put a picture of a skate park because we kept hearing, oh, we'd love to have a skate park. I know there was a site at one point and it didn't work out, but that's an idea. You could create waterfront access, which I know is important in a lot of the plans that we read. For Chelsea, you can do improvements to existing parks. So you can put in, upgrade the paths. You could put in light fixtures. You could put in water fountains. You could do new landscaping, etc. You could also do new playground equipment, and I know Chelsea's very good about updating its playground equipment, but if there are needs that aren't addressed right now, you could upgrade playground equipment or create new playgrounds. And you can do open space preservation of natural resources, and we put a picture of a salt marsh here because we know that protecting salt marshes on a coastal community like Chelsea is very important for climate change and being a resilient community. So we gave you lots of ideas, but that's not all you can do. So as we go through these different exercises with you tonight, if you had an idea that we didn't think of putting on the slide, but you're wondering, is this eligible? You didn't specifically say it was. Just flag me down or Anna down, and we can help you understand if it's eligible. And even if you don't know if it's eligible, just write it on your tablecloth anyway, and we'll go through the projects and see what is eligible. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to go into another interactive part. We wanted to try to keep our speaking to a minimum so that we could really hear from you. What's next? So we are going to do this fun activity. Who has a cell phone here that they could text? Could you raise your hand if you do have a cell phone that you could use to text? It's just a few words. It's not going to use a lot of data. Okay, a few people. So now could you raise your hand if you do not have a cell phone and will need an index card to do this exercise? B does? So a few. Okay, so Anna's going to come around with some index cards. And we're going to run through this exercise, and this is the way it's going to work. We're going to put up this website you're going to text in an answer to a question. I'm going to tell you what the question is in a minute. And it's going to start, you're going to start to see your answers appear on the screen in a word cloud. And does anybody know what a word cloud is? Have you heard of that before? It's going to look a little like a cloud in the sky, but it's going to be filled with words. And the words that get the biggest will be the ones that people text into us the most. Now, what we're going to do on these, they're actually Post-it notes, not index cards. is that if you write your word, if it's in Spanish, we're going to need it to be translated. But if you could write your word, then we're going to input it manually for you during the next exercise. So your word will get in there. Now, if you want to write your word in Spanish, that's fine. We'll just need help from our interpreters when we're looking at the word cloud to understand what it is. So I'm going to bring up, be patient with me for a second. I have to bring up the website. It's already loaded. I just have to bring it up, and then I'm going to teach you how to do this.
Anybody else need a post-it note? She doesn't have a phone. Okay. Okay. Any questions about CPA? Or about what we're doing?
Maybe in the underneath another.
And then at the end, if you have a post-it, will you just hold it up and then we'll go right and collect it?
So for your presentation, you had a metric of what was available, what wasn't.
Yeah.
And the only one that didn't allow, what would be the creation of historic space? Because you said the creation of everything else was fine. I'm like, I don't know how you even create.
It's not allowed. If we go back to that matrix slide, which I can show you later, you can't create historic.
But what would that even be?
It wouldn't, it's impossible. That's why it's not, if you look at the matrix, it says no. It's not because they're trying to be mean, it's just how can you create something that's historic if it doesn't exist yet?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
fine.
No, it's a very intellectual question, so thank you. Okay, so take out your cell phones. So this is the question. I love Chelsea because it is, and then just type in your word. And so the way you do this is you text it to the number 22333. And the first text needs to be the company name. So you need to text in, the first thing you do is text in J.M. Goldson, which is on the screen. It's JMGOLDSON. That's just my company name, no spaces. Text that, Anna, it approves it automatically. Yeah. And then you can answer the question.
It'll say, you'll get a response that says, you've joined the conversation. And then you can text in your answer to this question. So then you can fill it in at the end. So you'll get a response. If you're having questions, raise your hand. Maybe I'll come over and help you. Or maybe a lot of people have that question and we'll try and help you together. Did anybody get the message yet? Anybody having success? Sometimes it takes a while. You got it. Okay.
Can you reread the number again?
Okay. 22333. And then the first thing you want to text that number is JM Goldson, GOLDSON. And then wait a little. It'll text you back, and then you can respond. Anybody having trouble? Feeling like they don't know what they're doing? Some people feel like they can do it. Anybody else have success? Yeah? You guys got it. Okay. You got it. Carl's got it. Everyone else? Oh, yeah. So Bee's going to walk around and start collecting the Post-its. So if you were going old school on us and not using a cell phone, we'll come around and collect them. Just hold them up in the air and we'll grab them. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do all caps. Do all caps.
Okay, so Jose's coming around to ask people. He's going to type them into his phone. But one thing I just learned is the word J.M. Goldson must be in all caps. Carl says no. Oh, Carl says it worked without caps. Some people are being denied for some reason, and I don't know why. But Jose's going to type it in. If you are sitting next to someone whose phone is not working, but your phone is working, please type in their answers for them.
Anybody else have any issues? Has anyone not had success either writing down their answer or submitting it on a phone? Okay, so I'm going
Chelsea, why?
Something that's not really. After you scan that and put things that they're looking for, but you don't really have the full page. Tricky way to quality of in high school, I was, well, actually, my class was 10th grade, 9th grade, or something. High school. Every Jewish holiday we did nothing. Because 2/3 of my class were Jewish. They're all into holidays.
Okay, is everybody having fun? Okay, good. So I don't want to cut you off. I'm going to leave this live while I speak. But what I want to tell you is what's going to happen next. So Anna is walking around, and she's going to hand one person near you, or maybe you, a clipboard. And on the clipboard is the exercise we're going to do, but we're going to actually run the exercise from up here. It has to do with more of those digital polling with the little remote controls. And then there's going to be some discussion questions. And so there are, I believe, 10 clipboards. So we're going to get into groups. We're going to get into 10 groups. And we want to see if we can get into groups of 4 to 6 people. And so you're just going to kind of talk to the folks near you. You don't need to worry too much about it yet. It's not happening right this second, but that's the next thing that's going to happen.
So Williams, my class was, I was in 3 girls. Which is me, Gwen Tyree, Gwen is a girl. She's
Raise your hand if you want more time on this. Does anybody want more time on this exercise? Raise your hand. Okay, nobody's raising their hand, so I think everybody's done what they want to do, right? Because once I take it down, we can't add any more. Okay, so I'm going to shut this down and then we'll go into the next exercise. I will just say before I shut it down, you should check it out. It's pretty cool. So what you see is not everybody's response, because I think we did get some post-it notes and we'll be entering those in. But outside of those, what I see as the biggest thing is home, love, community, and there's lots of other words there that I can read. I know some of them I can't read. We'll figure those out. But we've got comforting, diversity, resilient, united, wonderful, safety, so lots of great things here. So if you have one more idea, go do it quick, because I'm about to take it down. Okay. Okay, good. So we're going to get up the next polling exercise. Is everybody ready for the next exercise? Is everybody ready? Yeah. Okay, good. So take your little clickers again. We're going to ask you a series of questions, and some of them are going to be really hard. Is everybody ready? Can everybody hear me? Okay, does everybody have a little clicker? It doesn't matter if it's the same one you had before. Just grab any clicker. So we're going to ask you some hard questions. And the one you see on the screen now is, which category is the most important for Chelsea? Now, I think it's a very hard question because you may think that more than one category is very important. But what we're trying to get at is an understanding of priorities. And it has to do a little bit with the exercise we did on the back wall about choosing where you put $7 or $700, whatever you want to say, the 70%. We want to know if you have a feeling about which is the most important for Chelsea. We're going to ask this question twice. We're asking it now before we do the exercise we're about to do. And then we're going to ask it again at the end. And we just want to see if your opinion changes at all after you go through the exercise and discuss things with your neighbors at your table. Your answer may not change, but we're just curious about that. So go ahead and say your answer. We have A, community housing, B, historic preservation, C is open space or recreation, and D is if you really just can't choose and you're going to say more than one. I'm encouraging you not to choose D, but I wanted to give you an out if you really thought that there was more than one thing that was the most important. But if you can pick A, B, or C, I would prefer that. Does anybody have a question on what I'm asking you? It's straightforward, it's just hard, I think, for some people. They don't need the stickies anymore. Yeah, they can just do it right on their little polling device. So we have about 34 people. It looks like either we missed some people because they left or not everybody's participating. You can always press it again if you're not sure if it worked for you, and it will not double count you. Okay, now we have more. Why don't we see what we got? Do the stop sign. Oh my goodness, okay, so 62% in the room said community housing is the most important for Chelsea. 17% said historic preservation. 17% said open space and recreation, and only 4% said they would need to choose more than one. Next question. Okay. So before you answer this, let me explain what we're trying to have you do here. So we have picked fake projects to throw out at you to see which ones you'd pick if you could only pick one. We're going to do this for each of the CPA categories. And what we're asking you to do is pretend you're a CPC member. Pretend you're sitting on the Community Preservation Committee and you've just received 4 applications for community housing. And you can't afford to do all of them because you only have so much money. You may like all of these ideas, but you can only afford to do one in this funding round. And so if you were one of the 9 CPC members for Chelsea, which one would you say, I really want this one? And it's a simple exercise, but it might be a hard choice. So does everybody understand what I'm asking them to do? And then I'll read you what the answers could be. Okay, so here's the question. If you could fund only one project for housing, which one would you choose? A, local rental assistance vouchers. B, first-time homebuyer assistance. C, create new deed-restricted affordable units. And I put that this could be through new construction or reuse of existing buildings. Doesn't matter, we just want to see if you want to create new units. And D, preserve the affordability of existing units. Sometimes affordability restrictions expire and the units are no longer affordable. And you can use CPA funds to preserve them so that they remain affordable. So those are the 4 projects you have before you on the table. You're the CPC members. Which one would you vote to fund in this funding round? A, B, C, or D? Okay, so it looks like we're stuck at 36 people. So does everybody understand the exercise? Does anybody have a question about what I'm asking you to do? We have something like 15 or more people who haven't, no, 10 or more, who haven't voted yet. Oh good, now they're going up. Okay. Raise your hand if you think you need more time. No. Okay, let's close it down. So, the first-time homebuyer assistance got the most votes at 38%. And then split evenly, 22% for create new deed-restricted affordable units, 22% for preserving affordable units, and 18% for the local rental assistance vouchers. Raise your hand if you felt like this was really hard. Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Not good that it was hard, but thank you for telling me. Okay, so let's go to the next question. All right, now we're doing historic preservation. So, if you could only fund one historic project in this funding round, would it be A, saving an historic building from being demolished, B, or I should say being demolished or demolition through neglect because it's just falling apart and nobody's taking care of it. B, repair a public historic building. And I just put an example of City Hall, but it doesn't have to be City Hall. C, make public historic building more accessible, maybe handicapped ramps or elevators or things like that to help people with special needs access the building. Or D, improve outdoor historic places like for public access And I put the example of, is it called the Chelsea Garden Cemetery? The cemetery, just because that's something that people talked a lot about in our focus group. So A, B, C, or D?
I would do it as accessibility, because I think it's that way we're thinking. Why don't you write it?
Question.
And write it on the table, because I didn't get that. Yeah, write it on the table.
There's a question over here.
Yes, a question?
Who has?
I would like to, the questions in Spanish, please.
Yes.
Repeat in Spanish, please.
Yes, can you repeat the, oh, thank you.
Si pudieran financiar solo uno de estos proyectos históricos, ¿cuál elegirían? Salvar un edificio histórico es A. B. Reparar un edificio histórico público, por ejemplo, la municipalidad. Tercero, C. Hacer más accesible un edificio histórico público. Cuarto, D. Mejorar los lugares históricos al aire libre para el acceso público, por ejemplo, el cementerio.
Gracias. Okay, so we have 38, 39, we'll wait a little longer. Raise your hand if you need more time. Okay, everybody who's going to go in. Okay, improve outdoor historic places for public access, like the cemetery, got a 35%. Make historic buildings more accessible, got 25%. Save historic buildings, got 23%. And repair a public historic building like the City Hall, got 18%. Okay, very good. Let's go to the next one. And as you may have guessed, it's the third category, which is open space and recreation. And so what we have is, if you could choose only one for this category, which one would it be? A, buy waterfront land to protect marshes. B, upgrade playground equipment. C, create a new park, new playground or athletic field. Or D, create public waterfront access. Do you want Jose to repeat that again? Yes?
Tenemos 4 opciones. Si pudieran elegir solo uno para uno de estos espacios abiertos de recreación, ¿qué elegirías? ¿Comprar terrenos frente al mar para proteger las marinas o marismas? Serían las marinas. Mejorar el equipo del patio de recreo, crear un nuevo patio de juegos, campo atlético, o el cuarto es crear un acceso público al malecón, que es como la costa o el agua, la orilla del mar.
Okay, looks like we have 35 people. Raise your hand if you need more time. Does anybody need more time? Okay, go ahead, Anna. Okay, so we have 38% saying create new park, playground, or athletic field. We have 33% saying create public waterfront access, and 14% split evenly between buy waterfront land to protect marshes or upgrade playground equipment. Very good. Okay, so Anna, is there another polling? I think we go back to the presentation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is discuss why you chose the ones you did, and if your choices matched the ones that got the most votes or not. Could I borrow somebody's clipboard very quickly? Thank you. Okay, so this is what we're going to ask you to do. We're going to ask you to get in small talking groups. You can organize yourselves, but the people who are sitting near you, make sure one of you has the clipboard. So we'd like you to be in groups of roughly 4 to 6 people, but one of you should have the clipboard, and there are only 10 clipboards, and I will give you this clipboard back. And while you're doing that, I'm going to tell you what we're asking you to do. And so the person with the clipboard will have these questions. We're also going to put them up on the projector so that you can see them. But the 4 questions we want you to discuss, and the person with the clipboard will then record your answers on the blank paper that's behind the paper with the writing. The one question is, do you agree with the polling results? Why or why not? 2, what were the hardest choices that you made? 3, how do the types of projects you favor relate to the community values in the word cloud? And actually, we want to put the word cloud back up too. So we'll see if we can fit both these questions and the word cloud on the screen so you can see both. And then 4, were there any types of projects that were missing that you wish had been included in the choices? So those are the 4 discussion questions. And what we'd like you to do is have very good active listening to each other and be respectful of each other's opinions. They may differ from yours. We'd also like you not to use your phone during this exercise. We'd like for you to really pay attention to the people that you're talking to. And if you do need to take a call or text someone or what have you, we'd like you to please leave the room for the moment that you need to do that and then come back in and join the discussion. We'd like you to really be very good listeners, and we'd like to make sure that everyone in your group gets a chance to speak. So if you know that you like to talk a lot and tell a lot of examples, we'd like you to try to talk less so that the other folks in your group have a time to speak. We are going to be timing you. We promised to get you out of this room by 8 o'clock. That's when we're going to do the wrap up. And so we'll be watching how your discussion goes, but we're not going to give you too much time because we want to have you have the chance to finish. We have a couple more polling things that we're going to do before we leave tonight. Please raise your hand if you have any question about what I'm asking you to do right now. Okay, so I'm going to give this clipboard back, and you can go ahead and discuss the questions on the clipboard. Make sure that someone records them. They can be recorded in Spanish. On the paper, we'll have them translated. Thank you.
Wrap up their last thought, one last thought in their groups. Seems like a lot of people already done. We're going to bring it back, and then we'll break back out into groups. We just want to do one last polling question. And this, and so this question will take the top answers from the 3 categories that the 3 polls that we just did. So it takes the top result from housing, which was first-time homebuyer assistance, and it takes the first place in historic preservation, which is improve outdoor historic places for public access, and it takes the top result from the open space and recreation poll, which is create new parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields. And if you want Jose to say it in Spanish, you certainly will. But you have to choose one. So similar to the polls that we just did in each category, you can only fund one project. So imagine yourself as a CPC member, and you have all 3 projects in front of you, but you can only pick one to fund.
Entonces, para esta actividad hemos tomado las respuestas que la mayoría de ustedes eligieron y ahora les vamos a pedir que elijan de nuevo. Entonces, si pudieran financiar solo uno de estos proyectos, ¿cuál elegirían? Primero, A, asistencia para compradores de vivienda por primera vez. Segundo, B, mejorar los lugares históricos al aire libre para el acceso público, por ejemplo, el cementerio. Y tercero, C, crear un nuevo patio para jugar o campo atlético. Entonces, de esas 3 opciones, ustedes tienen que elegir la que ustedes creen que deberían de dar fondos y solo pueden elegir una.
I'm using the little polling devices again in case I wasn't clear.
Bro, you're mad fake.
Oh no, they had there was one time we had filing was a DPO recommending us one of the embassy police officers to walk into the park. So 29 drove by saying, this would be here private park.
Does anybody need more time answering the question?
Basically did give it up right.
Anyone want a couple more minutes? Everyone feel like we got it?
So somebody else.
Say 36. We have most people, but some people may be left. So we're going to close the poll, get them in now. Ooh, okay, first time home buyers comes at 58%. Improved outdoor historic places is 25%. And create new parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields is 17%. Okay, so we're going to break back into our discussion groups. That's at the, oh yeah. So we're going to break back into our discussion groups and talk about the same questions, but in relation to this poll. So why did you choose the project that you decided to poll on? Did other people in your group also select the same project? How did the project that you picked relate to the word cloud? I don't remember what the other questions are, but they're on the sheet.
What's missing?
What's missing?
Fourth question is what's missing.
Oh, what's missing? Thank you, Mom. Okay, so there is no what's missing on this one, but you could, I guess, if you have time. And then, again, as a reminder, if you have any project ideas, maybe one of these sparked an idea, write it down on the table. Okay, so we'll break back in for about 5 minutes, so keep your points quick, and then we'll come back and we'll share some insights from your different groups. Okay, thanks guys.
Okay, that was the bell. So we're going to go on to one final polling question. It's the same one we asked you at the beginning of all of these exercises. We just want to see if your answer is the same as it was when you first answered it. And it's okay if it is. We just want to see if your minds were changed at all. So the polling question is up. It's which category is most important for Chelsea? A, community housing. B, historic preservation. C, open space or recreation. And D, more than one. And yes, if you didn't hear me just say that, this is the same one you answered before. We're asking you again to see if your answer is the same. Jose?
Entonces les vamos a hacer la misma pregunta que les hicimos al comienzo, solo para ver si su respuesta ha cambiado después de estas conversaciones. Y la pregunta es, ¿cuál de estas categorías es la más importante para Chelsea? La A, vivienda comunitaria. B, preservación de la historia. C, espacios abiertos y recreación. O D, más de uno. Entonces, por favor, respondan.
And they love because
Hello, okay. We were having about this amount before, so raise your hand if you need more time. Nobody, okay. Oh, no, I don't think that's more time. Close it down. Okay, so I actually think we have more now. I can't remember the number. Do you remember? Yeah. It's like 58. Now we have 73% say community housing is the most important. 22% says historic preservation, and 5% say open space recreation, and nobody says more than one. Now, to be fair, some people have left the room. So it could be that the people who stayed are the ones that feel this way, and if the other people had stayed, maybe the results would be the same. We don't know. But we can just look back at the numbers and see how many people left. But we won't know what they would have voted because they're not here. So anyway, thank you for entertaining us with your votes. We do appreciate that, and it's very helpful for us to understand your priorities. Thank you so much for participating in this night. Before we close, I have a little bit of housekeeping and a little bit of advocacy to do. One is that I'd like to make sure that you all take the survey. It's online. You can access it at the city's website. It's also, it doesn't look like it's up this second, but we can get it up on those computers if you want to do it before you leave. It won't take that long, and we have to clean up anyway, so you won't feel like you're holding us up. Okay, so just to remind you of the next steps, we will be compiling all the results. We'll be rolling up these tablecloths. We'll be collecting the clipboards with your notes. We'll be looking at the check marks that you made on the exercise over there. And we'll be creating a summary of what we learned tonight. And then we'll be going to the next CPC meeting, which is sometime in October. But I know that we're looking for a date right now to meet. And then after that, we'll be writing the first draft of the plan based on what we heard. And we'll be presenting that to the CPC for their consideration in November. And then in December, we will have a public comment period. And we hope that the CPC will adopt it in December.